without airlines.
Sometimes you find very strong businesses, but very thin margins.
I also encourage women to be more confident, to come out and be counted.
Catch The Trading Bell every Wednesday at 8 p.m. on KTN News.
We value your feedback and welcome any comments, queries, or complaints regarding our news content. You can get in touch with us on SMS 22155, call 0719 012 450, or you can send us a letter on Post Office Box 30080-00100, or deliver it to our offices at Standard Group Center, Mombasa Road, Nairobi.
Uko na change? Uko na ruzi ya dhao? Chao. Makanga mnapatanga gigs zingine huko nje. Kuja unyonyelea gari ya wangige.
Venye pali niko, venye wako hata udereva wangu wako na mimi.
Hizi zinaitwa mende. Tunadharauliwa sana, zinaitwa mende kwa barabara.
Lakini hapo ndo mlianzia.
Hapo ndo tulianzia.
This is KTN News.
Welcome back. You're watching Morning Express. Thank you so much for making time. We definitely continue deliberating on matters touching on the day-to-day affairs of the nation. A lot of politics going round, and we'll definitely like to begin on that particular note. The latest, as we expect the Sagana meeting to commence today, running all the way into tomorrow. And I'd like to begin on that note. Elijah Njoroge, as we well know, the focus right now is on the members of County Assembly. You happen to be one of them. I'd like to just inquire what exactly is happening in your caucuses. Perhaps you've had talk of what we should expect today with a meeting with the president. Any highlight?
Thank you very much. I want to say that the IBC has communicated to the county assembly speakers and confirmed that now BBI is ripe to be taken to county assemblies for consideration. And I also want to tell you that most of the county assemblies are on recess, and we are resuming a job on February. And we are going to handle the BBI. And you must expect politics. And it's also good to note that many people are mixing BBI report and BBI process with the 2022 presidential candidacy, because there are people who are going to support BBI because of Raila Odinga, and others are going to support it because of William Ruto, and vice versa. But what we expect is that the MCAs should consider the country and not the presidential candidates.
Okay, it seems to be going into a political side, because it's highly political.
Yes.
That's the ugly truth, because we haven't had so much debate about the content. It's about he said, she said, and it seems to be a mobilization strategy right now.
Yes.
MCA, will the members of County Assembly truly look, speaking truthfully, will they truly look at the contents and make sure that this is the way they'll pass or reject, or it'll be according to the tide?
Yes. Based on my experience, no, because it is politics happening now.
Yeah.
You don't expect a member of county assembly in Wasingishu to oppose it, to pass it, and Ruto he wanted to be opposed. You don't expect a member of county assembly in Kiambu to oppose it, and we have the head of state coming from Kiambu. So for me, number one, I'm supporting it because the head of state is asking me to support it, and I'm after him. I come from Kiambu.
All right.
So it is about politics.
Okay.
And we must deal with it as it is.
Still on that general outlook, should the president and ODM leader Raila Odinga be worried?
They should be worried because if they don't act, if they don't talk to MCAs, the MCAs are going to shoot it down. Yes.
And why is this?
Because, number one, many MCAs want to be re-elected in 2022, and they don't want to be seen by the people as people who are betraying them. So they're going to listen to the people. And the people nowadays, and today, like if I talk about Mount Kenya, Kiambu County, Ruiru to be specific, people don't want BBI. They don't want it because they know it. They don't want it because they know the contents. They don't want it because they don't want Raila Odinga in Mount Kenya. That's the reason.
Well, that's interesting.
Yes.
So the ground is hostile. It seems the president has his work cut out for him in that Sagana meeting.
Yes.
Professor, what do you make of where we are as of now in terms of the process of constitutional amendment? It's been highly politicized. It's not really about the contents, it seems.
Yes.
I think you are right, and I want to commend my colleague here for honesty. He's really answered you very honestly.
Quite so.
Which is really good. Let me say this, the BBI will pass. And it will pass, not because, in my opinion, a lot of people think it's going to solve our problems, but because that's just how our politics are. The MCAs are not different from the members of parliament. I think the executive has a total control, and therefore it will pass. But the questions that will not be answered is, why did we even need it in the first place? I mean, now, of course, we are not discussing BBI. We are discussing now the amendment bill to the Constitution. Which mischief any of those clauses are curing? That question they will not ask, like my partner here has admitted. They will just be looking at the key leaders, key politicians, and this is our problem. Because in my opinion, changing the Constitution has nothing to do with the president or with William Ruto or with Raila Odinga. You change the Constitution, you make laws for posterity. You never make law with any individual in mind. So there was a 9 agenda which preceded the BBI. This were part of it was putting the country together, making sure there would be no cyclical violence after every election, and then making sure also we have ethics, ethos as a country. We have something that we all believe in. All these things seem to have been swept under the carpet. I know coming from the Mount Kenya region personally, there are things there which will make this process look like it's good for the Mount Kenya. They are, for example, getting more representation, which was not there because the Mount Kenya region has been underrepresented for a very long time. I think that is being cured, but that does not increase the CDF allocation to anyone because you have 100 shillings dividing to 3 people, then you turn out to divide that in 6, everybody gets less. So here, I would be happy if these MCAs can actually debate this bill.
Okay. Well, debate is very important. MC, are you going to the meeting today, just to clarify?
Thank you. I am, like you can see, I'm dressed in red because I'm the chairman, Jubilee Caucus Chair, Kiambu County. And I'm proceeding to that meeting after here.
Okay.
Yes.
Allow us to bring in Elisha Odhiambo, who's just joined us via way of Zoom. He's a member of parliament for Gem constituency. Thank you so much for your time and good morning. You're just catching up with a conversation and you've just come in at the right time. I'd like to canvass the letter written by 41 members of parliament from the Mount Kenya region in sort of protest in terms of not being invited, yes, but some of the issues they did highlight. And I'm sure you have gotten a copy of that letter. Number one, it seems to be an issue selling Raila Odinga in the region or indeed any other imposed presidential candidate. But apart from that, I'd also like you to talk about some of the issues highlighted in terms of political persecution of leaders and the economic ruin. Over to you, Meshimio.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Yes, having listened to your statement about the letter written by the leaders from Mount Kenya region, I think that sort of letter looks like the leaders were not were incited to write that letter. I was with Raila in Githurai, and the welcome that we received, very interesting, because most people are ecstatic and excited to meet us. I don't think the leaders are talking on behalf of the many Kenyans who come from Mount Kenya region, because Mount Kenya, many people were in Mount Kenya. A number of them now know that without Raila Amolo Odinga, this country would have gone to the dogs. More importantly, the peace and stability that we witness, the economic recovery that we are witnessing, which was rapid by COVID, would have been the country would have gone very far. But I want to remind my brothers from Mount Kenya, this country is bigger than those leaders. We are talking about 50 million Kenyans. We are talking about just about 41 people sitting together to write a letter. The benefit that the country will reap from BBI is bigger. And more importantly, if Raila was selfish, he would have decided to create more constituencies in Luo Nyanza, which he didn't. More constituencies created are in central Kenya and Rift Valley. The beneficiaries to BBI is squarely in central and Rift Valley. Nyanza is not benefiting. What does that show you? That Raila is a selfless leader that believes in the unity and stability of Kenya. He believes that this country progressively can be bigger than the tigers of Asia if well managed. And let me remind those leaders, if they decide to talk about Raila. Number one, Raila's own father insisted that there was no independence until Kenyatta, the father of Uhuru Kenyatta, was released. Then Raila insisted that Raila himself insisted Kibaki Tosha. Are these leaders from Central so selfish that they don't think of the country? They are thinking of the small money that they pick from Karen every Friday. It's very unfortunate.
All right, those are allegations, Member of Parliament. But even as we continue with this, interacting with some of the members of Parliament who might have divergent views on this, they picked out the bravado which the BBI reggae was started. No one can stop reggae. The train has left the station. Do you think this has actually played a part in turning the BBI from its contents, actually politicizing it even more? Because it seems the politics and mobilization is taking a front seat apart from the contents of this particular report.
I think you may be partly right. What would be more important, like you say, is for the leaders to read the content of BBI, explain the content to the public, so that the public have an option to say yes or no. Ultimately, when we go for a referendum, it is the public who will decide. It's not Raila or the president who will decide. The public will decide based on the leaders explaining to them the content in the document. It's not about rhetoric. The rhetorics, any politicians will have them. But ultimately, the ball will be in the public court. The judgment will be in the public court. It will not be with the leaders. They can choose to write to the president all many letters. And that's really something a little bit shameful. We saw the letter from Kangata. We have seen now this letter. You don't write to the president. The leaders are from central Kenya. When they want to see the president, there are channels they know, and the president is accessible. If you want to see him, call for a meeting with him. I'm sure State House will be glad to host the 41 leaders. They will not refuse. Because I think the president has a lot of humility, and I think he listens to everybody else. So to say that you can't reach him, that's why you're writing the letter, is to look for public victory. I urge those leaders. That's important for leaders to look for private victory. There are many things that leaders do. You don't shout to heavens about them. Private victory, you are happier that you have done something to the public without shouting about it.
Okay, let's bring in the MCA right here. And Njoroge, you mentioned something earlier on that still stuck with me, the issue of the ground being hostile. And I'm sure you want to be re-elected in 2022, so you have to also canvass the issues of the electorate. Yes. Some of them, the 5-point development agenda raised in that letter, economic ruin in the region, guaranteed minimum returns, politics of deceit and betrayal, and persecution of leaders. Hence, the mountain will remain restless. We can't throw water to this letter because, I mean, the Jubilee Vice Chair, David Murathe, sort of gave impetus. Yes, he did not agree with the manner in which Irungu Kangata passed the message, but he seemed to agree with the message itself, or at least part of it. What do you make of this?
I want to confirm that the ground is very hostile on BBI. And like I've said, it's not because they've read the contents of BBI, it's because of the politics of 2022. If I was the one to be asked, what time do we hold BBI? We should hold BBI after elections, because people are rejecting it based on who they support between Raila Odinga and William Ruto. Like if we talk about Mount Kenya region, like my area in Ruiru is cosmopolitan, and it's full of several tribes, and BBI is 50-50 in terms of support. But I want to say that we are going to pass or not pass BBI without reality. The MCs are not going to be real. They are going to be either forced, either to fear the electorates, the voters, or either their party leaders, but not the contents of BBI. I agree with the MP, Honorable Elisha, that it is Mount Kenya region that is benefiting from BBI. When we talk about additional constituencies, when we talk about county allocations, when we talk about, for example, Ruiru is getting 2 extra constituencies. Yeah. So anyone in Ruiru who is opposing BBI is opposing introduction of 2 new constituencies and more CDF cash. But people don't want to hear that. People don't want to know what is coming. People don't want to know how they're going to benefit. They only want to be heard saying BBI is a no because of William Ruto in Mount Kenya. I want to be very clear and say it is William Samoei Ruto who has made BBI to be unsellable in Mount Kenya region because he opposed it. And people must know one thing. BBI is not a one-sentence document. It is not a one-sentence process because you're supposed to read BBI based on what fits you. It is survival for the fittest. You should mind your own business. If you're going to be president, read the line that talks about presidency. If you are a farmer, read the lines that are talking about farming. For example, let me say something. Raila Odinga wants to be president. He must support BBI, according to what people are saying, because he always becomes number 2 in every election. And now BBI is introducing a position for the person who becomes number 2 every time. William Ruto wants to be president, and he doesn't want to share power with anyone. When he becomes president, that's why he is against BBI.
Right. So this is some of the rhetoric that is going around, Professor. Misinformation or disinformation, whichever angle we take it. The point of the matter is, and I'd like you to speak on this, those advising the president, because going with the nature of politics in the country, he's supposedly the mouthpiece of the mountain region. What do you take of those advising or around him or selling this agenda in the mountain region? Can you pull similarities with the emperor's robe?
I think, I'm really impressed by MCA, by Bwana Njoroge here. He's been extremely candid. But there's another dimension people are missing about the people of Mount Kenya. The people of Mount Kenya are not going to see the additional MPs and they think that is manna from heaven. These are people who value business. These are people who value honor. They value peace. And they see this as an attempt to inject chaos into an orderly system. The whole process. Let's assume we just pass this being behind by May. It's passed. Where is the time to do even the delimitations? You see, when you go to delimit these constituency boundaries, you need to consult the people, because you can do it in a way that, there is clanism also, just like we have tribalism at the national. Also, you go down there, you meet the clanisms. So there is a way you can do those in boundaries, and there's some clans within there, they will never see parliament. And so on. So all that time, they see there is no time. But more important, you see what the MCA just said, is the fact that it has been tied to the election. So what the best way, if this thing is good for Kenya, do it after the election. So you can remove both the Raila and the Ruto from the equation and do it. But you asked about the people advising the president.
Yes.
I think you quoted the 1985 book on the Emperor's New Clothes. I think the real friend for the president is Rongo Kangata. He told the president what is on the ground, what is happening in Mount Kenya. The real friend for the president is Bwananjoroge here, because he says what is happening there. Now, you have to understand one thing about the people in this region, that Raila has been demonized, even though, in my opinion, Raila has made this country. He is the father of democracy in Kenya. But he has been so demonized that in going to these people, changing them is not going to be a walk in the park. I remember as a commissioner attending women meeting in Karantina, Mount Kenya Guild, MCA, these women for the church. They were over 8,000. When they are asking Jesus to intercede between them and the devil, they were also asking Jesus to intercede between them and Raila. That was just before 2017 election. They were considering Raila exactly the same as the devil. How you change these people is a nightmare. I think this is 41. These MPs who have written to the president, this is what they are telling the president. They want the president to be a Kibaki. The president is not a candidate. Allow people to settle themselves and vote. They are talking about imposing. So they are seeing an active role by the president trying to impose somebody. I think the president allow Raila to sell himself. Raila is a good man. People will listen to him. They will listen to his agenda. Even so far, you can't distinguish Raila and Ruto so far. It will be foolish to think they are different. Because our biggest problem in this country is corruption. None of them is giving us an agenda on how to deal with it. So in my opinion, they are just the same. And therefore, they should be allowed to go to the front without bringing Raila in. The other thing is, if I can say this very quickly,
briefly, yes.
I notice a cultural difference also that makes Mount Kenya people recoil when it comes Raila. When Orengo was talking where's the place again? Githurai. Everything was must. We must penetrate the mountain. The Mount Kenya people must go to Nyas. The Central Kenya doesn't like force, doesn't like must. We like more concession, more negotiation, nice language. So there's a cultural difference here also that need to be considered. And it is important. It's the forcible speaking, and it makes us recoil.
Okay. So the divisive nature of our politics is definitely not encouraged, and we definitely don't encourage it right here. But let's take a look at some of the scenes. Before we go to you, Elisha Odhiambo, let's take a look at some of the scenes that characterize some of the political meetings in the country. Let's start with Bama Market right now.
Nataka niwaambie watu wa chama ya kitendawili wawache kutumia vijana vibaya. Vijana katika mji wetu wa Nairobi na Kenya wanataka nafasi ya kufanya biashara. Mtu wa kiosk asaidiwe anunue duka. Mtu wa duka atengeneze supermarket. Mtu wa bodaboda asaidiwe anunue taksi. Na wa taksi asaidiwe anunue matatu. Na yule wa matatu anunue bus. Hiyo ndio Kenya sisi tunatarajia, na hiyo ndio Kenya tunapanga sisi wote tukiwa pamoja. Watu wa Nairobi tunakubaliana?
Well, that's a message, or at least part of the message in the political rallies. Member of Parliament Elisha Odhiambo, I'd like you to bring you in at this particular point. Deputy President William Ruto, the wheelbarrownomics, the hustler narrative, and you name it all, has been able to capture the Kenyan spirit, one way or the other. And I'm sure most in the political circle have spoken truth to this. How exactly might you plan to counter, as a member of the ODM party, how do you counter this if it's not ideology-based? The political rhetoric is definitely not substance-based. What do you make of this?
I think we must, as a country, rethink about the rhetoric of wheelbarrow. You saw what happened in Nakuru. An ordinary parent taking the child back to school. That parent just knocked a motorcycle. His car was burnt. A lorry that was transporting items, an ordinary person, Mr. Karaoke, just bumped on a motorcycle. His lorry was burnt. Is that the rhetoric that this country wants? If they want it, so be it. But I am persuaded that if we go that direction, we'll turn Kenyans against other Kenyans. Because the idea of wheelbarrow is to pit people who are driving cars against people driving motorcycles. For a leader, what the deputy president's level, to stoop that low and create enmity among Kenyans is not the thing you want. You remember what happened in the Rift Valley. How many people were killed? How many Kikuyus died? I can tell you, it was a trigger. And this is the trigger all of us are talking about. I expect
so allow me to cut you. Apart from the class wars angle, Mheshimiwa, apart from the class wars angle, I'd like you to speak to the ideology behind this, because he's been able to capture the imagination of, maybe we call them unemployed Kenyans or struggling Kenyans, one way or the other. How do you counter this if it's not ideology-based? Because even previously, apart from the wheelbarrownomics right now, that has been nature of politics. We've heard of Tinga, we've heard of, and all that back in the day. How do you capture or counter this?
I think what is important, my brother, is when the campaigns begin, the campaigns have not started. When the campaigns begin, you'll see a more better crafted ideology that will drive the engine of this country. Mm-hmm. An ideology that will look at how do we empower our people in the village? How do we empower the farmer? How do you get employment for people who are not employed? I want to remind you that when Uhuru Ruto, in 2013, they came to power, they promised to give computers in all schools. Do you have those computers? The deputy president himself promised a number of stadiums. Do you have them? Those are fundamental questions that we're going to raise to the public as we go to the campaigns. Right now, as ODM, we have just requested aspirants to present their papers for nomination as presidential candidate. Once that process is completed, then we'll get to the higher gear of a campaign that will enlighten the citizens on what ODM will do different. You know the debt of this country. I'm aware that the country wants to increase the debt to about 15 trillion. Mm-hmm. When Kibaki left this country, we were at about 850 billion. You cannot blame the president for that. You must blame the president and the deputy president himself. They are all together in this. You cannot be a Mr. Clean when you have misled your boss. So the country will wake up once the politics, the rhetorics begin. Right now, the focus, which I think the BBI, is to bring sanity to the public and to ensure that the president has some legacy, has something to go home with. It's up to Mount Kenya whether they want the president to go home with something or they want the president's achievements to go to the dustbins of history. It's up to them.
All right. Well, you've definitely said it as it is. Professor, I'll give you a right of reply before I cross over to Mheshimiwa as we take a look at what Raila also had to say in his tour of the country in terms of popularization of the BBI. Professor?
Yeah, first let me just say that the Asola narrative doesn't have to be a bad thing for the country. I think we need to transcend emotions and realize that for a long time, our primary organizing tool for election has been the tribe. So for the first time, whether you like Ruto or hate him, he has brilliantly shifted the debate now to class. So we'll be able now to develop policy. They will, I'm assuming, the next thing is policy proposals on the things he was saying there, how to move people from A to B and so on, policy proposals. So it's not a bad thing. Now, to counter that, the other side, which I don't want to use the word dynasty, I think we should call them conservatives, if that's what they are, because there are two people. There are people who believe that we can build from ground, and there are those who believe we make the rich richer, and there's a trickle down. So I'm assuming that's the position then the ODM and the other conservatives who want to take. They need to find an effective counter-narrative. It's not enough to frighten us. The Mbonda have always behaved like that. If it's true what he just said, that nobody has a right to break the law, whether rich or poor, the law should be able to punish you. Now, having said that, let me say also this, that I think the Mheshimiwa is undercutting his own argument when he's talking about the promise for the laptops and so on. Because you can say the first time of Jubilee, the deputy president and the president will share both the success and the failure for the first time. For the second term, the deputy president was removed. He has been outside looking in. So for the second time of Jubilee, the success and the failure of Jubilee for the second time is equally shared between the president and his brother, Raila Odinga.
But his argument was it's a joint candidature. You can't blame Uhuru.
Well, but we legally separated them. We legally, because the idea of bringing Raila in, Raila has been acting like a government functionary, officiating government functions. Like the other day, he was in Kisumu launching government project, issuing policy, government policy statement.
All right.
So for the second round of Jubilee, which is the election of 2017, Raila has been he has been in government just as much as Ruto was in the government in the first term.
Did the handshake disrupt Jubilee government's agenda?
Yes, it indeed. So we need to be honest here. What the handshake did, it moved in Jubilee away from the Big Four into the BBI, which we are still in the BBI, and it disallowed the Jubilee to pursue the agenda so that the president as his deputy share the failure and the success. Now the failure and the success is distributed between the deputy, between Raila Odinga and the president, who is the Jubilee party leader.
Professor, as we conclude, others might argue that the handshake was an enabler. It was supposed to bring the enabling environment for...
But it did. That's what they were supposed to do, but that didn't happen because it lost the focus.
All right.
You see, the focus was to create an environment where we don't have cyclical violence every election. Then it moved to constitutional amendment, and in fact, it's not a constitutional amendment. It's actually a constitutional overhaul. Because we are changing 64 clauses out of 261. That's an overhaul. It's not an amendment.
All right, Professor. Well said. See, before I cross over to you, I'd like us to hear what Raila Odinga had to mention in one of his popularization campaigns. Take a listen.
Naleta salamu kutoka kwa ndugu yangu Mheshimiwa Uhuru Muigai Kenyatta. Mnapokea? Mnapokea? Wangapi wanapokea? Nione kwa mkono. Juzi viongozi wa hapa Githurai walikuja kunitembelea kwa ofisi na wakaja na ujumbe na vile vile wakaja na memorandum ya kumbukumbu ya hapa Githurai shida ambayo iko hapa Githurai. Moja ni juu ya soko ambayo inajengwa. Wakasema hiyo soko ni nzuri lakini ni kidogo. Hawezi kuchukua wafanyabiashara wote wa Githurai. Inaweza kuchukua hoteli 1,500 peke yake, hali ya wao hapa iko karibu wafanyabiashara 6,000. Sio? Pili, wakaniambia mimi ati ile reli ambayo ilifufuliwa, ambayo ni mradi tulianza na Uhuru ya kufufua reli itoke Nairobi mpaka kule Nanyuki, imekata soko mara 2, moja kushoto na moja kulia. Sasa watu hawezi kuvuka kutoka pande hii pande ile nyingine. Wakaniambia mimi sasa dawa ni nini? Dawa ni nini? Daraja. Daraja. Na daraja si ndio ni BBI? Si BBI. Building Bridges Initiative.
Well, some of the rhetoric that goes on. Well, MCA, you happen to come from the locality right there, and you definitely have a touch with the ground. It's interesting to see that. Apart from the chaos, we'll get to talk about that. Pushing the development agenda through Daraja, through the Building Bridges initiative. Isn't this what the locals might want to see?
Number one, I want to say that I come from Ruiru, with Rise in Ruiru constituency, and I'm a member of County Assembly from Ruiru sub-county. Yeah. I am aware of what happened because, number one, I know that when Raila came to Githurai, his supporters came out and received him. And unfortunately, no leader from Mount Kenya region, or rather from Kiambu County, was in that meeting.
We'll get to ask Elisha about that.
And the reason was just one. The answer is one. People and leaders were fearing being seen as opposing the common mwananchi. It has to be noted that people were thinking that Raila Odinga cannot come to Kiambu County. And we were all shocked that we lost the chance to be there because he was received by very many people. Many people from even my ward were hired through a certain leader to come and oppose him. And they were paid 500 shillings.
Allegations,
each.
Right?
Not allegations. I'm reporting and I want to be accountable for what I'm saying.
Well, he's not here to defend himself, whoever you're talking about.
Yeah, because I've not mentioned him. Let me say that my people, some of my people, were paid to go to Githurai, 500 shillings, to go and oppose and also boo Raila Odinga in Githurai. But that notwithstanding, I want to say that you've asked about development.
Yes.
Development is not coming through politics and what we are doing now. What is happening in Kenya is pure politics, as if elections are happening next month. And I think we should tone down politics a bit, because the kind of politics I saw in Githurai, if we continue with the same the whole of this year and we cross over to next year, I don't think even business will be doable in the Republic of Kenya. When we talk about wheelbarrow hustlers and Kieleweke, the people on the ground have been told that they are hustlers, and they've been made hustlers by dynasties. That's the narration on the ground. But what makes me wonder is one thing, that Tangatanga movement are opposing BBI and are opposing what the goodies that are coming with BBI. But they are not giving us what they are going to give us in return if we oppose BBI. I've read BBI myself. I have a copy with me here. And I must say that there's nothing. I've not seen any word like wheelbarrow, like Mama Boga, like everything Tangatanga talks about in BBI. So I must say that William Samoei Ruto is misleading this country by saying that hustlers are going to benefit by opposing BBI.
Professor, briefly.
I think if you want to counter the Tangatanga, we need to really have fact. This is the argument if you listen to them very carefully.
Okay. Professor, allow me to take a break. I'm being pressured by my director. Let's take a short break right now. Elisha, I know you're still with us. We'll definitely get to hear your right of reply, because, I mean, we've had of the accusations that, you know, the handshake might have disrupted the agenda. But, I mean, the cabinet is composed of appointees of Jubilee. We'll get to talk about that. Let's take a short break. Stay with us. You're watching Morning Express.